Welcome back to Living Well. This module is designed to give you an overview and interpretation of your StressScan summary report. I'd like to refer to your report, so if you have an opportunity to pull that out and take a look at the page that corresponds to an overall summary, bar graphs, of each of the specific StressScan scales, I'd like to point our attention to that page initially, and then I'd like to, in this presentation, walk through each of the StressScan scales in a little bit more detail to help you to interpret and use this very important personal stress and wellness feedback report. You'll notice that there are bar graphs, some pointing perhaps for you on the left and others pointing to the right across all of the major StressScan scales. And you can see on the next slide that we've highlighted some of the major StressScan scales that we'll be looking at. And those include perceived work and life stress, health habits, social support network, type A behavior, cognitive hardiness, coping style, and psychological being. We also want to help you to understand that some of the bar graphs will point to the left, and those would generally mean that those scores are below average, and other bar graphs will point to the right. Those would indicate that those scores are above average. And on the slide you're looking at, you'll notice at the very bottom is an arrow showing you that those pointing to the right would in fact be scores compared to the normative database, and that is composed of a very rich and very large number of working and non-working adults, over 10,000, rich in gender, rich in ethnicity, and very useful as a way to compare your perception of your lifestyle habits, your attitudes, your behaviors to a large number of individuals. On the next slide, we also want to be very clear that not all of the high scores are actually desirable. For example, you'll notice where some of the scales we've had reported, 3 of them in fact, high score is not desirable. It's pretty natural and pretty intuitive that if you have a very high level of perceived stress, that probably isn't a very good thing. And in fact, that's one of 3 scales where a high score, or a bar graph to the right, would in fact be categorized as less desirable or undesirable. So we'll walk through this report and I'll give you an idea of these, but stress in general, type A behavior, which we'll define, and also something called negative appraisal would be 3 of the StressScan scales. Ideally, you don't really want to have a bar graph pointing to the right or to have a high score. You'll notice on the very next page there is a circle within a boundary of the bar graphs that gives you an idea of a way to evaluate whether or not your scores really match up to the norms that are being used with StressScan. If your bar graphs are within that shaded circle that you'll see on this slide, you can rest assured that your scores are pretty much like just about everyone else that have taken StressScan, even if the bar graphs look a little lower or a little higher. In fact, statistically, we know that scores within that circular area really represent about 68% of all individuals that have taken StressScan in our very large normative database. Don't be alarmed if you have a bar graph that's higher or lower or outside that circle. We'll define this in a little bit more detail as we walk through the report. But the circle again just gives you a rough idea of where kind of the average score would be for most people taking StressScan.